Microsoft called it. Last year was the year the frontier firm was born. AI-native organizations running on intelligence on tap, human agent teams, everyone at every level becoming what they call an agent boss. Great headline, tiny problem. Most companies working within regulated industry are still firefighting pipelines built when Tony Blair was in office. Data plumbing designed 2 decades ago. Implicit knowledge baked into code nobody understands anymore. A dragon in the basement. You can bolt all the AI you want on top of that. It will not make you a frontier firm. It will just make your regulatory problems arrive faster. Welcome to Scouting for Growth. I'm Sabine VanderLinden, where we untap how the intelligence layers get built one frontier firm at a time. My guest today is Patrick Van Deven, CEO of Volspeed, 35 years in enterprise software. He wrote and sold his first commercial product at 22, 15 years at SaaS Institute building data and predictive analytics applications, a decade as an operating partner and GP at Fortino Capital, yes, in venturing. And in January 2025, Patrick stepped out of the boardroom and back into operations to run Volspeed as CEO because he believes automating the deterministic, audit-ready data substract underneath every AI agent is, in his words, a no-regret move. His customers include the like of Thomson Reuters and NN Group. He told me that he works with Fortune 100 and many others. I would recommend that you check Volspeed's website if you want to know more. In the next 40 minutes or so, we are talking about what the frontier firm promise actually requires when your data lives across Guidewire, Salesforce, SAP, and a handful of outsourced contracts you inherited from someone else's decade. Why architecting doesn't have to mean a 10-year core system swap, and whether regulated industries can deliver on the Asian boss promise, or whether you are about to walk off a cliff they can't see. Patrick doesn't sell hype, he sells the substract. Patrick, welcome to Scouting for Growth. Good morning, Patrick. How are you?
Good morning, Sabine. Thank you for having me. I'm very good here. Thank you.
So such a pleasure to have you on the podcast today to talk about Volspeed, but also to really understand how that weave into some of the concepts I'm talking about on the podcast this year, which is the Microsoft, I would say, frontier firm manifesto, and partly calling into what we call intelligence on tap. As we all know, last year, in April 2025, Microsoft put together a manifesto around the frontier firm is born, which means we are talking about AI native, agent-enabled, intelligent on tap businesses. And we are seeing right now a few business emerging as leaders into that new frontier. But every chief data officer I speak to is still firefighting pipelines built 2 decades ago. So I want to start where the story actually begins, which is let's go into operation. Let's look into your background, Patrick, because I know that you spent probably a decade in venture capital watching the AI hype curve bend, and you made some choices to become the CEO of Volspeed. So we want to go into that and really understand your background, what got you to move into Volspeed and lead this wonderful team.
Yeah, I've been very lucky to spend my whole life in software. Started as a software engineer, coded my first app age 22 and sold it to my first customer. So I've always been in love with these things. And when I saw AI coming up, and indeed we meet Microsoft everywhere we go. We are a great partner. They are a great partner to us. We have a dedicated account manager at Microsoft looking after us. We very much watch what they do. And indeed, Satya was very vocal last year about, the future of software as a service and this whole thing. And to come to your question, what AI did software to engineering last year, it's going to do it again this year, but to data engineering. And data engineering is a little bit different than software engineering. It feels more spooky because it's going to do things to my data. And where is my data going? And I'm a regulated industry. So, okay, should I wait? What can I do with this new thing? So that got me really into jumping back into a operational role, taking the CEO job at Volspeed after being their chairman, which is a bit of an unusual move. Usually people do the opposite. But indeed, I've been very fortunate to work with Fortino Capital, investing in software startups. Volspeed has always been my darling. It was the first VC investment we did with our second fund. I really liked the founding team. And when I saw AI coming to this space, I thought, well, all right, let's do it one more time and join the founding team. Let's do something out of Volspeed. And actually it works. Yeah. So it's fulfilling its promise, which is very exciting.
Yes, and I want to thank you for inviting me to one of your sessions recently where we actually dove into that foundational data topic. What I see, even when I speak to chief data officers, chief risk officers, chief financial officers right now, is that data conversation is amplifying because, as you know, regulated industries like insurance have been built on M&A. So they have a lot of core systems, a lot of systems full speed. Some have up to 300 systems sometimes a year globally. Patrick, what surprised you the most about the gap between boardroom AI ambition, and I'm talking about ambition, what they want to do, the vision, the goals, and what data teams are actually able to do when they go to the office on Monday morning?
Well, there's a guy I follow on the internet called Joe Race, and he does surveys, and he has quite a decent sample now. Thousands of people are answering to that question. And number one complaint from the data engineers is that management doesn't understand what they do. There seems to be a huge gap between the people down in the basement plumbing data and expectations from the board. So I'm not oversimplifying, but just to make a point that those conversations maybe help bridge the gap between people who are in love with technicalities of things, AI, coding, etc., and the executives who should care about other things, about their products, their customers, the global economy, the world around them. And so how do we connect the dots? Let's have that conversation, absolutely.
And so when you look at some of the statements you made to me in the past, is we're in a phase of no regrets. So let's unpack what that means. What do you mean about no regrets? What should we watch for today?
So here's a problem that we see and that we are set to solve or help solve in. In enterprise, data is horizontally distributed across many source systems. So let's unpack that. Every source system, SAP, Guidewire, Salesforce, you name it, your own systems, your old data warehouse that called legacy, but has not yet been unplugged. So each of those systems is a world of its own and has a legitimate right to hold a piece of the data. It needs it to operate. And there is no world where a company would run on one system. That would be a lot more simple, but it's not the case. So if you have a use case where, you want to provide a lineage report to your regulator, you want to have a customer 360 view, you want to launch a new product, inevitably along the way, you will need to extract data from the source systems and piece it back together, like stitch the data together. That's what we call data integration or data transformation. And that's the problem where projects stall, because until now, it has been a complicated process involving quite a lot of manual coding, programming. It has been seen as for low added value, things you need to go through, but why does it need to cost so much? So it has been outsourced massively, offshore platforms, etc. So fast forward 10, 15, 20 years, the teams who built that logic of integrating a piece of data from Salesforce with a piece of data from SAP, with another one from Guidewire, and etc., like 100 systems together, teams are long gone. People have moved on. Or those who stay are very rare subject, really experts that are swamped into work because they are a bottleneck. Every time you need to change something, you need to go through that process. All right. So why do I speak about that is because this problem has now come to the board and to the surface because of AI. Because the board looks at AI at the end of the value chain of the data. They have that dashboard. They want to drive new products. They hope that AI through agents or through chatbot will be able to understand the data AI is looking at. So it will understand the end product of the data. But how did that data came to be? How was it stitched together? What is the source? What is the authority? What is the definition of customer in this thing? And what is the definition of product and claims and policies and etc.? Yeah, all that business logic is actually buried into code. And to make things worse, it's buried in code in quite dusty old on-premise software platforms that were never made for consumption by AI, let alone being hosted in a cloud service. Now, I understand there's lots of conversations around cloud today because of sovereign discussions, etc. But leave that alone for a moment. You have code that stitched the data together that is full of implicit business and data logic baked in. AI is not going to figure this out, You can't have AI read the whole source code of your data integration layer every time it needs to run a query. That's not going to work at all. Everybody understands that.
So I'm going to go back to the definition because I think it's quite timely right now, Patrick. So Microsoft called a frontier firm an organization which provide intelligence on tap, and that is what we are diving in today. So intelligence is utility, and you need to be able to have access to that intelligence data in the right place, right? And being able to feed the process, the workflow, regardless of whether you build a business for today or for tomorrow when we start thinking about agentic. Second, human and agents are going to collaborate. So we are going to be collaborating with human people as we are doing today, but we are going to have colleagues which are going to be digital labor, digital workers. And lastly, all of us are going to become agent bosses, agent managers. So we may sometime when you start looking at the human agent ratio, 1 to 3, so complex claims, for example, may actually require 3 expert claim people, right? Adjusters to 1 agent or nose agent. Whilst in some situation, 1 person may have 50 automated agents supporting them. Let's say in sales as an example. Now, when we start looking at the ingredients or the levers or dimension of the definition is first, we need to have the right governance and ethics. So you started talking about that. Second, we need to think about partnership. We cannot cause a frontier alone, right? No organization can do it on their own. And so they need to work with organizations like Volspeed to start accelerating and becoming frontier in 18 months. Then the point you just touched upon right now, AI integration. You need to have a roadmap as to how you are going to do that data and AI integration. Then we need to have the right leadership, the right change management, and we need to be flexible and adaptable. So if Volspeed is a shovel, who is holding it today and who should be holding that shovel?
It's a super interesting question. Lots of things to unpack here. Starting with the end, who buys Volspeed today are those companies who have quite a complex data infrastructure to solve and too small of a team to do it. You can't brute force. You don't have the people. You don't have the skills. So doing it the old way with plumbing and manual coding, it's not going to work. So you need to think it totally radically different. And what Volspeed brings, which is basically describing the model of the data and let Volspeed write the code for you, okay, in a totally deterministic and safe way, right? And then in the process of doing so, we generate a lot of what we call metadata. It's a bit of a technical term. It's data about the data. So the metadata, the descriptions of what we're doing, and we do it in a machine readable format. enough with the techniques. What does it unlocks? It unlocks that AI will see how the data came to be. AI will be able to read all this implicit logic about how you group your customers, how you treat your claims, how the different types of policies, the brokers, their commissions, etc. All those logics that are buried in the problem I talked about earlier, like the horizontally distributed data that you need to stitch back together to make sense out of it. Volspeed does it in a way that is not only automated, which goes, it will be ready way sooner than 18 months, if I may say. You will get results in the first 3 months, okay? And you will get results with a surprisingly small team. We have customers with just 5, 6 people managing up to 20, 30 sources. And when I say source, that can be a whole SAP system. So it's not a small table, right? It's a whole monster, okay? Multiple of them. You would have ECC and S4HANA, you would have a Guidewire, etc. For us, it's each time one source only. So 17, 20 sources like this. We have customers' references. For example, in the Netherlands, Nationale Nederlanden NN is using us with 17 source systems and a surprisingly small team. Because we're an automation platform. And because we automate, we generate all the descriptions that AI needs to understand how the data came to me. Right? So who needs this? Those who simply don't have the capabilities, the capacity to keep going or redo the whole programming because they want to move to an AI native platform and they want to move away, or they merged. Okay. You talked about M&A. Insurance is a classic one. Lots of M&A, and every M&A, guess what, brings a new zoo of source systems, a whole new data landscape that was never meant to be integrated with the one you have. These were separate companies. And yet you still want to have your regulatory reporting runs no matter what, because you need to report. Okay, so how do you do this in like 3 months post-integration? Okay, the M&A deal is signed, the data lands, the source system, the operations are not yet merged. You probably have a post-merger integration plan that will take 2 years with synergies. There's backed by a business case, all right? That is all good and well, will take 2 years. But in the meantime, the regulatory report is due in 3 or 6 months. How do I do this? Then you go to the data warehouse team, and that is where executives get confronted to a system that has never been meant to do these kind of things. So we see customers saying goodbye to their old way of doing things and rebuilding with automation. Recently, we migrated, migration is the wrong word. We rebuilt the whole data warehouse for a customer, a big one. 25 years of coding, rebuilt in 8 months by 2 people.
Incredible.
When I say, yeah, AI is coming to data engineering, just like it has come to software engineering last year. Back to Satya So with Microsoft, just to say a few words about them, we have quite a lot of customers on Fabric, on the older version signups. We also have customers still running SQL Server. On the data landscape, everything is on Azure anyway. We meet them everywhere we go. There are customers on Databricks as well running on Microsoft infrastructure. These are implementation details. The core of the idea is you've got to stitch the data together one way or another. If you do it with an automation framework, you get 2 benefits. It goes faster. You need less people. And second, in the process of doing so, you create a treasure of metadata that is precisely what AI will need to understand exactly what data it's manipulating. Now, the specific way we do it with Volspeed, if I may do a little bit of a pitch for us, is that...
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we bake in our system the lessons learned across dozens of very large enterprise data warehouses across the world. We have Fortune 100 customers, multiple Fortune 500 customers with big teams, 100, 200 engineers. And so along the way, we learned our lessons. We learned to build Volspeed to solve the most complex problems. And until recently, to be honest with you, the system was quite sophisticated. But with AI, we managed to make it a lot more easy to use without sacrificing the intrinsic sophistication of it. The net result is you can build on the shoulders of giants. We built Volspeed for the very large, and AI makes it accessible for, I would call the subtop. Like any insurance company is a big company, by definition. But it doesn't need to be a monster, right? So you've got different sizes in that space. And the way we build the system is we learn from the very big, and we are applying these learnings and make them accessible for those who have much smaller teams.
So when you start looking at the roadmap, Patrick, when you look at the change impacting and affecting us today, and the data foundation is probably one of the biggest conversation I'm having, it needs to be quality data, unification of data. You mentioned being able to integrate it. So there are some levers every organization needs to look at to not build AI on a data swamp. So what would be that roadmap? Where should they start from? Because I'm having those conversations all the time right now. We talk about AI, but then you realize without the right data in the right place, well, we are just having empty conversations. What is that roadmap?
We like to connect the executive floor with the plumbers in the basement. No offense for the plumbers. I'm one myself, okay? So what you do is take a tractable problem. By tractable, I mean it is solvable. You have the data, you know where it is. You may struggle to piece it back together because it's trapped somewhere. And you have people who can connect that data to a problem that is really impacting the business. One, okay, that will grab the CEO attention, or just one level below, like the board. Recently, it was a bank, but you will do the analogy. Somebody talked about, the lineage report for a BCBS 239. You need to show to the regulator that report that you give to the regulator. How did you build it? Where is the, okay, can I come and audit the lineage? No, how did the data came to be? Oh, it's a perfect program for us, okay? Or another one in the insurance sector, we had recently one tractable problem, just to give you an idea, is this insurer worked with brokers, a large number of brokers, different networks of brokers across different business units and types of insurance products. And the brokers are complaining that their profit sharing, the commissions are obscure, could be challenged, not always right, and coming very late. So can we build a reporting that provides a kind of self-service, but also a very much more reliable and explainable profit sharing mechanism to our brokers? And guess what? The data for the brokers is horizontally distributed across 15 systems, the pricing systems, the contracting system, the CRM, etc. You know it. So this kind of problem, pick one that has visibility at the board, where you have the data in-house, you've got people that can connect the two, and with our automation, we solve it in 3 months. And that shifts the mindset of how you think about that whole thing. What used to be a project of a year or two will go a lot faster, with the side benefits that I explained earlier, that it's not just faster, it's also a no regret move, because you do it for optimal use by people, of course, but also partially by AI consumption. Okay, and AI means something very different than a screen with menus, a mouse, point and click. Doesn't care about that, AI. Maybe AI wants a Neo4j knowledge graph, just to throw a buzzword into the conversation here. Something where it will navigate at the speed of light that we humans don't comprehend, but the AI will be at ease with it. So us as software vendors, technologists, we are in a very exciting moment right now in the industry, because we're building software for both usage. Software for you and I, with our eyes watching a screen and trying to make sense of what we see and interacting with software the way we've always done for the last 40 years. And now also a new breed of experience for something that is non-human. And the platform needs to serve both and have oversight on what the agents will be doing, which is yet another chapter, maybe for another podcast.
I agree. I mean, when you think about, you mentioned the term knowledge graph, and I think it's a very important term. This is one of the, like prompt engineer. I think knowledge graph is going to become one of those key terms as part of the architecture, but also that human agent labor collaboration and how that works in a new environment. I'd like to dive into that re-architecting and that agent boss, right? That third pillar a little bit more into Patrick. I mean, as I mentioned, the frontier firm thesis is clear. You don't bolt AI into a broken operation, and you have to re-architect. And in insurance, often when we talk to CIOs, they feel really uncomfortable, right? They have near to a cardiac arrest when you start talking about core system, right? Because they had system, you can't swap your core system. You don't replace the core system because this is the dragon in the room, right? It's so massive and the risk is so great. So you also have told me, and partly when I met, some of your customers like Thomson Reuters, when I came to your event, who did this massive transformation around M&A, that at the end of the day, you may have to still stitch policy, customer, claims definition across all those systems you mentioned earlier, the Guidewire, the SAP, the Salesforce, and so on and so forth. When actually we have a major talent gap in our industry, everybody, I'm exaggerating. A lot of people are going to retire within the next 50 years. A lot of people are going to retire within the next 10 years. And those are people over 50, repeating my statement and correcting myself. So what does re-architecting mean if we want to be frontier?
It's very interesting that you bring the talent equation here. Finding people to still work with the legacy technologies, COBOL, mainframes, etc., is going to be quite challenging. It already was challenging. It is going to be increasingly challenging with the rhythm at which the technology evolves. So having something that is modern, that has a lot of best practices baked in, that you don't need to reinvent the wheel, is already a talent magnet. You will attract the right kind of people. The system, as I said earlier, has learned lessons. That's the building on the shoulders of giants. Okay. Another thing that comes to the surface when we talk about that is the probabilistic effects versus the deterministic procedures. In data engineering, the code creates data. Actually, data doesn't exist in the world. Data only is there as a byproduct of software. The code creates the data. Okay, so if we automate the code and if there is any risk there will be a lot of pushback, right? So that's why the way we generate code is totally deterministic. The code is pre-written. It's going to be 100% of the time exactly the same code every time again. It's how you configure the system, how the system guides you, how the system learns from what you do. That is AI. Okay, and that stays inside them. That doesn't touch the data. We never deployed AI on the real data. We only deploy AI on the description of the data, and we help configuring and solving the pipeline issues, the manual coding I was referring earlier. So that's two aspects. One was talent and how do you equip the right kind of talent? You've got to have modern technologies to do so. The second is how do I avoid hallucinations, probabilistic effects, just explained. And maybe the last thing is how do you kind of save the planet from energy and water consumptions by not doing too much of AI? Some of the patterns in data integration is the same thing over and over and over again. And when I see some LinkedIn posts recently, we live a bit in a technology bubble, I go very skeptical saying, why would you ask AI 1,000,000 times the same thing? You're burning tokens. It's getting very expensive. Anthropic, OpenAI are going IPO. So very soon we will see the real cost of those things. Right now it's still subsidized. Everybody says that you can't run it for the price they charge you. So once we get addicted to this intelligence on tap through Microsoft or otherwise, the bill will come. So we are engineering our systems in anticipation of that, saying, you know what, those parts of the system that are every time the same thing across all our customers and within the customers 1 million times a day, I care for the planet, right? I care for the money of my customers as well. So those things we will harden, and we have that in a kind of pre-cooked library that does good for the deterministic aspect of the system, and that does good for the finance aspect of leveraging AI at industrial scale.
Let's think about data lineage, right? When you think about the CDO, the Chief Digital Officer regulated industry, how do they make sure they pass that data lineage all the time? How do they get that right from the outset?
They're going to be confronted to a world at two speeds. You have to deal with the legacy that's there and where the problem already exists. Those on-prem systems are hard to understand. Teams have moved on. You inherit a whole legacy. If you have done an acquisition, maybe the people who built it are long gone and you have no access to. So it's already a problem today. Then you're going to build with AI. And of course, you need a system that is designed for it, where, the construction of the system is made for regulated industries. Okay. Where you can show exactly the deterministic aspects of it, and where the metadata that we capture and that we generate along the way is used directly for your IFRS 17 report or otherwise. The other part that a CDO cares about is quality, authority, governance, and there are tools for that. Great tools. We're great partners with Colibra and others, with Purview, if it's a Microsoft stack or others. And so what we do is we don't overlap. We just consume what's there. My honest experience with large enterprise is that it's never complete. Parts of it are represented in the governance tool. Parts of it is documented. Other parts are in yet another system. Other parts will be in an Erlin Power Designer, Miro system, PowerPoint, Word documents in the heads of the people. Then you need to extract it by recording them and transcribing their meetings and using AI to make sense of what those people are talking about and connect the dots. Because if that problem was not solved yet, there's a good reason for it. It's complicated, So it has many moving parts. So the role of a CDO is very often to navigate the landscape of tools that they have, the different speed at which the different teams and the different part of the infrastructure can move.
So based on what you just said, though, one thought came through my mind, Patrick, which is when I talk to people in general about the transformation we are going through around artificial intelligence and agentic AI, there is this fear of irrelevance. So we just talked about the chief digital officer. We talked about their team. And I'm wondering, how do we make sure that our future, as a human agent collaborations, but also agent bosses feel empowered to do the role they are meant to do, I would say, in the future? How do we activate that belief of the opportunity?
It's a great question. Thank you for that. My personal conviction is that this is a new era for subject matter experts, those who have a deep understanding of how the business works, because that is the thing that is unlocked now with AI. Engineering work like coding or data plumbing with no understanding of the business, just executing on instructions coming from those subject matter experts is a job that is getting automated away. Not totally, because you still have supervision of the system. There's a human in the loop. You still need to have technicians that understand how the thing works, but you need much fewer of them. You don't need as many people as before. But what you unlock is the opportunity for those who can to work at a higher level of abstraction and come much closer to what the data means, how is it used, what it is used for, business understanding. And those two connect through tools like Volspeed or others, because it's a single place where you can describe the model of the business, the model of your data, with people who have the technical skills to understand the source systems, etc., and how it's stitched together, and together collaboratively create this layer of intelligence that will unlock all the AI use cases. So long story short, there's a lot of good future for people in the business who have this technical acumen, who will find a new buddy in the data engineering team and a new breed of software platforms like ours to collaborate together.
Yeah, it's where that change management, that change leadership requires the business, the technologist, and the data expert work together, right? This is like, you have to embed that into the mindset of people. The other part, I'm not sure we can answer on this podcast. Maybe we'll have to dive into it in another podcast, is what does that mean for the interns coming to market, those young people trying to find their next role? You have lived this story from every seat already, right? You have been an engineer, you have been a data scientist, you have been an operator, you have been an investor, you have been a CEO. So I would like to land the plane and help people listening to this discussion, as they go into the office on Monday morning, to think about what the future is going to look like. So let's think about the CEO, right? You work with many of them of a regulated industry. He's going to listen to this conversation between you and I, and, she is thinking about 18 months from now, right? We are saying that frontier firms are going to be built within the next 18 months. So she has finite budget and a really demanding board, right? They want visibility. They want to understand what is happening with AI. They want to know what is happening with data. What is the one no regret move she must do on Monday morning? What happened today? What happened in 5 years? What happened to the company if she doesn't do anything? Give us some visionary, insight.
There will be new products coming to the market. There will be new services coming to the market. And the only way to react and to anticipate, to adapt, is to solve once and for all the dragon in the basement. The data integration problem has been seen as, all right, we have time, it's a thing for the technicians. They will sort it out. But now it has board level attention. This horizontally distributed data problem, you can't expect AI to go fetch Salesforce and SAP and Guidewire and magically figure it out. That's never going to happen. You've got to stitch the data together your way. And we're advocating for doing it the new way, using AI. For data engineering, like everybody knows now, you can vibe code an application over the weekend. Okay. You can vibe code data pipelines. We suggest you use professional tools, like don't let your data engineers go rogue and vibe code their pipelines every morning. But there are very modern techniques now to solve this very old problem. And taming a 25 years old data warehouse that stands in the way in 6 to 8 months is doable. Talking of CEOs, well, disclosing names, I spoke to one very recently where his board is actually very challenging because they look at value creation, shareholder value. And when you've done a lot of M&A, you've got the synergies going on between operations, etc. But in the age of AI, how do you stay agile, nimble, invent new products? How do you stay relevant against competitors that are born with AI, who don't have this data problem at all because they're so small? They don't need to care. They started from zero. And you start from hundreds of systems that you acquired through 5 or 6 M&A over the last 5 years. It's unfair. So that is the kind of CEO level problem.
Yeah, it exists. So thank you so much for the discussion, and I have so many more questions, but let's maybe park those for another conversation. I think as we talked about intelligence on tap, right? Utility is happening, and we need to build this correctly wherever we sit in the organization, whether it's in claims, whether it's in policy, whether it's in billing, right? Those systems are connected, and we need to build those knowledge graphs so that we can access the data so that whatever AI we build on top, whether it's pure automation or agentic workflows, they actually work best for the organization. And we also make sure we're, considering the impact of AI on the sustainability agenda, on the planet. So, Patrick, if people want to talk to Volspeed, if they want to talk to you, what should they do?
Reach out on LinkedIn. I'm pretty vocal on LinkedIn, or reach out to us through the website. We're doing webinars very frequently. The event where we met in London, we're doing the next one that's going to be in October in New York City. Yeah, we're doing also a lunch and learn session in Hartford.
In Hartford?
Yes, of all places.
A whole insurance place. I think a lot of my colleagues will be happy to hear about that.
Yes, and we can post the link into the comments on your podcast. So happy to provide you the registration link.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Patrick. Thank you for this insight. I'm sure we are going to have many more conversations on this. Just yesterday, I was talking to a colleague of mine around that data issue, looking at billing, for instance, and trying to really sort out that data management. I said, you should talk to Patrick from Volspeed. Maybe you will find ways to actually build the right knowledge graph. So thank you for joining me, and I cannot wait to continue the conversation. And there you have it. The reality check between the frontier firm vision and the legacy data dragon most enterprises still keep in the basement is what I'm walking away with. Agent bosses, intelligence on tap, digital labor, workforce transformation. All of those headlines mean exactly nothing unless the data underneath them is deterministic, governed, and traceable 3 years backwards. Patrick said it plainly. No data lineage, no agent bosses, no governed transformation, no intelligence on tap. An IT landscape is never static. Stop firefighting pipelines. And maybe the best line of the whole conversation, treat the AI agent like an employee. Onboard it, brief it, give it a personality. Be brief, be bright, be gone. That is not cute. That is the operating model for the agentic frontier, and I have seen it myself. 3 quick things before you go. 1, subscribe to Scouting for Growth wherever you listen. More frontier firm operators lined up, and you don't want to miss them. 2, rate and review the show. 30 seconds for you, a meaningful lit for us, and a gift to the next leader working in a regulated industry who needs to hear this conversation. 3, find Patrick Van Deven on LinkedIn. Visit Volspeed.com and take him at his word. If your team is re-architecting anything this year, automating the deterministic data layer is the no-regret move. Start the conversation. I'm Sabine VanderLinden. Keep scouting, keep building. See you on the next episode.